Hello everyone, this is Robert Whitaker with Journeys Through Time from HansfordHeritage.com. Today is episode 19, and this is going to be with Mr. Knox Pipkin. He was 81 years old when this was recorded in 1974. Knox Pipkin and the Pipkin family are pretty well known in the area. I was born just a year or two after this interview with Mr. Pipkin, but I remember a little bit about the Pipkins that we went to the Union Church with back in my grade school days, a long time ago in the 80s. But interesting narratives that go on in this episode about the economies that he went through. One of the things he talks about is a money panic of 1905. Now, he doesn't remember a whole lot of that personally. He just remembers his dad and his family going through it and talking about, the history of that. And he also goes into a lot of historical narrative about, the progression of farming practices over the decades, the progression of ranching situations that happened, with cattle owners, ranchers throughout the years. And of course, specifically the crash of 1973 gets talked about. I remember my dad and my grandfather both talking in detail about the cattle market going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, in the early 1970s. And so it was hard to peel away from this. I just kept, listening diligently, and didn't even take a whole lot of notes because it honestly sounded a lot like listening, to my grandfather or even my dad, talking about things, a lot of the same things they've talked about over the years that I can remember. Knox is also talking about here in this episode. It's mostly about farming and ranching and the histories of, how things were done in those industries. So enjoy this. You'll love it, especially if you're, farmer rancher. This is a fantastic historical narrative about what it takes to have been a farmer at 81 years old in 1974. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Good morning, everyone. Our guest this morning is a young fellow by the name of Knox Pipkin. We'll be talking with Knox for quite some time this morning. Our program is brought to you by the J.L. Brock Insurance Agency. Knox, before we hear from our sponsor, how long have you lived in this area?
Well, I've moved over on the place where we live at the present time. Been there 55 years this spring.
And where is that place, Knox?
Well, it's about 4 miles east of the Booster Northern Natural Plant out here in a mile north.
Out west of Spearman, then?
Southwest of Spearman.
Southwest of Spearman.
20
a mile
miles.
East, did you say? And
about 4 miles east, a mile north to the place.
And that makes you how far from Spearman? About 6 miles?
About 20 miles.
About 20 miles?
Yeah.
Oh, this is out there.
We're in Ochiltree County.
Yeah, you're, did you live somewhere else before you moved there?
Well, the first year I was married, we lived at Pampa the first year and put in a wheat crop over there. Then we moved south of the old Blodgett place a mile and lived there 4 years, and then moved over to the present place.
And were you born in Gray County?
No, I was born in Childress County, in the northeast corner of Childress County.
We'll find out about that right after this message from J.L. Brock Insurance Agency. Our guest this morning is Knox Pipkin, who is 81 years young now, and that means you were born about 1893, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And born in Childress County, and somewhere near Childress?
No, it was up in the northeast corner. We was quite a little way from Childress, the town of Childress.
And so you've been a farmer about all your life then?
Yeah.
What's taken place in the farming industry in the last 80 years, Knox?
Well, it's changed all the way from a walking plow in my day up to now.
Did you ever follow a Georgia stock?
Well, I didn't follow a Georgia stock, but I followed a 12-inch walking plow behind 2 mules several days.
That was a turning plow.
Yeah, well, a turning plow, moldboard plow.
Yeah, and that's where you broke land. How many acres could you break in a day?
Well, we had 70 acres of farmland we planted feed on. That's about as much farm as anybody had.
And do you know how much land you could actually till with that moldboard in a day's time, about a couple acres?
We plowed 3 acres in a day if you got up with it and stayed there.
Before daylight and after dark?
No, you could do that in daylight time if you...
In the summertime?
Yeah, summertime.
How about daylight saving time? Did you ever pay any attention to that?
Well, I remember when they had 2 different kinds of time. Country people had what they call sun time, and then they had what they call railroad time. And there's 45 minutes difference between railroad and sun time.
Is that right? Railroads, I guess, set their clocks by all the whole United States then.
Yeah, they had a regular standard time, and I guess country people, they operate on sun time, but I know our time was 45 minutes different.
And farm people in those days didn't go by clocks, you went by the sun. For example, if you had a community meeting, you got there after dark, I guess.
Well, I don't guess ever had any community meetings. Just gatherings on Sunday and Christmas. They always had Christmas trees and things in the community.
How old were you, Knox, when you left Childress County?
6 years old.
6 years old. Well, you had experienced some farming there. What was the major crop? Cotton?
Cotton at that day and time.
Had a little different price in those days to what you have now.
Yeah, I imagine I wasn't old enough to remember. I was just 6 years old when they moved from the cotton patch. But we raised cotton as we come up there in Roberts County.
Yes, there was cotton there, and I guess McLean probably was your closest gin there.
Well, I think my dad hauled that cotton to Mobeedy.
Mobeedy.
Yeah. See, we live about... Dad bought some land, and we was about 25 miles northwest of Miami in Roberts County.
In Roberts County,
yeah,
and...
we lived there till he...
What was the wildlife like there? Do you remember prairie chickens and that
Oh,
sort
yeah,
of thing?
just prairie chickens everywhere, and I've seen quails piled in our lot where we fed the horses till you'd have to shoo them out for they're just...
Is that right?
Yeah, they're just everywhere them brown quail were.
And that's the bob white you're
Yeah,
talking
bob
about.
whites.
And they're not that plentiful anymore, but I guess we still have some bob whites around. But how about prairie chicken there?
Well, they was just thick all over the country at that time.
But there are very few of them now.
Yeah, very few. I don't suppose any in that part of the country.
What caused that, Knox? Do you know?
Well, I guess they killed them out. Too much hunting them.
Too much hunting. Too many people, I guess.
Too many people.
How about the community in Roberts County? Were the farms quite a ways apart?
Oh, yeah, the people were quite a ways apart. We'd go from our place to Miami, which was 25 miles, and there was just one until we got about 5 miles from Miami. There was just one house between our place.
What was your closest neighbor that you remember there?
Well, they're about 6 miles. Well, we had a neighbor closer to us than that, about 3 miles from us.
How about medical facilities? What'd you do for doctors?
Well, they had a doctor in Pampa. You just didn't have much doctor. And I remember our sister had typhoid fever while we lived there, and I went to Pampa every day, every other day, and sometimes every day to carry the chart over to the doctor, and he'd describe what medicine he wanted to have, and different things.
And so it was kind of a remote control then.
Yeah.
How about you didn't have telephones in those days, did you?
Well, not then, but all them ranches over there, about 7 families went together, and they run them a telephone Pampa out there on this side of the river.
How far were you from Pampa at that time? No?
We was about 25 miles.
25 miles. You must have ridden horseback then.
Yeah, went over there and back in a day.
That's quite a trip, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And early in the morning you'd go and take this chart?
Yeah, and sometimes the doctor would be out, and I remember one time I had to stay over there way after dark I was just a kid, about 9 o'clock when I left there that night.
Did anyone else in the family get typhoid fever?
Yeah, I wound up with it.
And I guess it was a very serious disease.
Oh, yeah. I had a brother who died with it.
And how long would you be in bed with typhoid fever?
Well, I was in about 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks. And what was the treatment mostly? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't know what it was. They gave you something, but all they could, but you know they don't doctor you then like you did now. You didn't get the attention, one thing or another.
typhoid fever, I guess you'd have fever some parts of the day and some parts you wouldn't. And
Well, yeah, it got awful bad. I
weren't hungry. And, just kind of withered away.
just withered away. They starved you out, you know.
Did your folks go with the idea of feed a cold and starve a fever?
Well, they went with doctor's direction. Doctor come out there one time. I had a doctor out there with her sister twice, and they was out there twice while I was sick.
That was an all-days project for a doctor to come out there.
Yeah, come with a buggy.
Do you remember who the doctor was, Knox?
Well, I can't right now. But,
There was a German doctor there for years and years.
well, that's him.
I can't recall
What's his name?
That's him. Huh?
He had an office right there kind of on the corner where that old hardware store is now, I think.
Yeah, that's where the doctor's
Dr.
office.
Bruno.
Bruno, that's the doctor.
Yeah,
And he's the one then.
Yeah, he's the one.
And he lived to a ripe old age.
Yeah.
He was probably up in his early 20s or late 20s.
Well, he could be, I thought, a pretty old man then.
Well, he lived to in the 50s, I think.
Yeah.
And quite a reputation.
I remember going there after him when I come out to see my sister, and he had a team of sorrel horses that looked just alike, and he hooked them up, and I held them while he hooked them up, and he said, now when I started getting the buggy, you get out of the way. And when he started getting the buggy, and the old horses just rode right straight up, and they just jumped, and here they went, and he brought them around the block, and I got in and come out, went out with him, left my horse there.
What kind of roads did you have there, Knox?
Well, I just had trail roads, you know.
This was in the early 1900s, I guess.
Yeah, about 1905, 6, 7.
And then later you moved to Pampa.
Yeah, folks, Dad bought a lot of cattle and hit that panic in 1905 and lost everything he had, and then they moved to Pampa about 1908.
Tell us about that panic, Knox. Can you remember much about it?
Well, I don't remember much about it. I just remember they talked about it. Nobody had any money. If you had the money in the bank, couldn't get it out. And,
that was called the money panic, wasn't it?
money panic, and cattle wasn't worth anything. They just went down to nothing.
And if you had no means of exchange, I guess
You was just,
the bartering took place amongst the farmers then, didn't it?
yeah, you just out. There wasn't much farming in the country at that time. Most everybody run cattle, you know.
Do you remember who the president was in that?
Well, I believe it was in that bank down there. My dad had money from them. I think it was Hot Beard who was in there at that present time.
Yeah, I mean the president of the United States. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
The name is Grover Cleveland is trying to come into my
Yeah.
mind. I may be wrong.
I'd have to look that up.
Some historian may be laughing at me right now.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of people talk about the money panic,
Yeah.
and that lasted about 3 years, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And a guy by the name of Teddy Roosevelt told all the people who supposedly had the money in hand that if they didn't loosen up, he was just going to print more money and make their money worthless. And I believe that that's what broke the money panic.
Yeah.
From what I've heard the old timers talk about. You don't recall that?
No, I was too young then. I was about
And how long did you live in Pampa? 1 year?
no, folks lived over there till my mother, she had got high blood pressure and they had to move, and they moved to Mineral Wells later on. I went over there and went to school 3 winters.
At Pampa High School?
Yeah.
And did you play football there?
They didn't have no football.
Football wasn't being played in
I
high school in those days.
I helped buy the first basketball they had and put up the first basketball goal they had over there, and the school boys had a team and the town had a team, and we played each other back and forth.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Well, about 1908, 9.
Long in
What?
there.
Yeah.
And you know where the schoolhouse was at that time? Downtown?
Well, the first year I went, we was east of where the present school is, on the other side of that draw over there at Pampa. And I went to school when they built that
Red School
little
Room,
red schoolhouse there. Well, 2 years in that.
which used as a band room, I think.
Yeah.
And you didn't have any paved streets in those times.
No, they didn't have no paved streets.
How big was Pampa at that time? 2,500 or so?
Oh, I imagine 1,000, 1,500.
And
Because I only had 4 teachers in the school
4 teachers.
first year I went.
Now, how was farming then?
Well, it just began to get going right good.
And was it a lucrative industry at that time?
Well, they farmed with teams all together. They didn't farm there like they do now, you know. And they made pretty good crops over there, though, all the time.
Now, in those days, the wheat was cut and stacked, and then a steam engine with a thresher came in.
Yeah.
And everybody would gather and harvest one field and then move over to the neighbor's field. Is that right?
Well, they did in the thrashing. They had to help each other because they had to have too many teams and things to hold grain, you know. And that first year we farmed over there, I hired the wheat cut with a header, or an outfit to cut it, and then the big old steam thresher come in there and they thrashed it, and I just hired fellas to haul grain to town.
Did they haul in wagons?
Yeah, wagon teams.
When was the first truck that you remember, Knox?
Well, about the first truck I remember, Blodgett out here bought one in 1919.
1919.
I think it was an old Nash truck, and didn't have no cab on it, and he had a wheat wagon grain bed on it for grain, to haul the grain in, to hold 100 bushels load.
Was that about as much as you could haul in a wagon, or more?
Yeah, that's what we put in the wagons.
So, but it was a little faster if it wasn't raining.
Yeah, made more trips.
But how were the roads? You didn't have good roads in those days, did you?
Well, at that time it was over here, and they just had trail roads where the wagon beat them out. You know, there wasn't no graded roads at that time.
How was it in driving? Did you drive that truck in it, Mr. Blodgett's?
He drove it all the time himself.
Do you remember the first vehicle you ever drove?
Well, Model T, I guess, first.
And about what year was that?
Well, I bought a Model T in 1917.
So you were driving before the truck came in?
Yeah.
And what kind of an experience? They were still scarce, and it was kind of an oddity. Wouldn't people gather around when you drive up somewhere?
Well, at that time, it had several Model Ts around. They kind of got used to them.
Do you recall how much you paid for that Model T?
$600.
Brand new? And
well, I bought it from another feller, but it's brand new. He just bought it.
Well, tell us about the Model T. Some of the people listening to this years from now may not ever know what a Model T was like. It had 3 pedals on it, and one of them was for a low gear, and you let the pedal out then, and it was in high.
Well, I don't think it had 2 pedals.
Yeah, it had a brake, and it had a reverse.
Had a brake, and you pressed one pedal down for low.
The middle one was for reverse, and then
yeah, I guess it did have 3. But I think it had a lever on the sides. You let down for high.
That's right.
That's right. Got the high.
You had to let the lever down, and that would throw it into the high gear. It only had 2 speeds forward.
Yeah.
And when the brake bands wore down to where you couldn't stop with them, we used the reverse to stop.
Use the reverse for a brake.
Didn't go too fast. And they had real hard rimmed tires that wasn't much better than just the old iron rims on wagons, were they?
If you had it flat, you just took it off in the road and carried patching along with you and patched it and put it back on, pumped up by hand.
And that was kind of knowledge. And you had flats a lot, too.
Yeah. And then in 1924, I come over here and bought a new Ford from R.W. Morton. And he'd come out with a battery and a starter in it, and I didn't want that. I tried to get one of the others, and he talked me into taking that one with a battery and a starter on it.
Was that because you were afraid it would give you trouble?
Yeah, I was afraid it wouldn't work.
That's real interesting.
Yeah.
And did it work all right for you?
Yeah, and he said if I'd go ahead and take it, said if it don't work, you bring it back, and I'll take it back and give you another one.
I want to tell a little story here. When I was about 1923 or somewhere along there, my dad bought a new Model A with maybe it's 24. It was the first one that had a starter on it. And they were gone one day in the wagon. They rarely went anywhere in the car, but they'd planned a trip to go to some of our relatives. And the whole idea was to get ready to go home and have my uncle to get around to crank the car, and then Dad was going to step on the starter and show him what a fancy Dan thing he had. But while they were gone that day, a little neighbor boy came over, and he and I played with the lights all day. And when we got ready to go, the thing wouldn't start, you can imagine. And I was in pretty serious trouble. It didn't take them long to figure out what had happened. And so they could run down, but In the first Model T you had, the lights ran off the magneto.
Yeah.
And or the generator, and that meant that if you slowed down, the lights dimmed down and so forth.
Run off that old magneto around that wheel is what
Yes.
you run off of. When you slowed down, you didn't have no lights.
And
When you needed
had
them.
to speed up your engine to have lights.
Yeah.
But that was an improvement over the coal oil lamps, wasn't
Oh,
it?
yeah.
That they once had on
And sometimes you didn't have no lights, and you just took your lantern and hung on the front of the radiator.
That's hard for people to nowadays that never lived in those days to understand, but that actually happened. You didn't travel too fast in a car.
No, you didn't. About 30 miles an hour, but fast as a Model T to run right.
That's right, and mostly 15 to 20 was what you
Yeah.
ran. But in addition to that, a lot of times you drove without lights, moonlight nights.
Yeah.
Saved the lights and so but many
Well, you
times
didn't travel as much at night like you do now.
the light bulbs didn't last long. It was always
No.
burning out.
Yeah.
And that you didn't have good roads. The Model T was built for the country roads, though. It didn't have high-centered problems like the...
Well, you couldn't drive these cars you got now over the road we drove over then.
They'd be on high-centered.
Be high-centered all the time.
Because the ruts wore deeper and deeper.
Yeah. Well, you got them too deep. You straddle them, makes them more.
Well, that's interesting about the cars in those days. When's the first truck you ever had, Knox?
Well, I bought a truck in '29.
And do you remember what it was?
It was Chevrolet.
Did it have just the 3 speeds forward, or some of those Chevrolets came out with 2 transmissions in them?
Well, that's not it. Just had 1 transmission. I think it just had 3 speeds forwards in it.
But it was quite an improvement over
Yeah.
hauling in a wagon.
Oh, yeah.
And not only did you haul your grain, but you hauled livestock and everything in them.
Well, they didn't haul livestock too much at that time. You couldn't put much livestock in one of them old trucks. The beds on them trucks were no bigger than on these pickups now.
And if you had a bigger bed, it wouldn't haul it. It just didn't have the power, did it?
Well, they was done pretty good. We hauled 100 bushels of wheat all the time on it.
And made lots of trips to town.
Yeah, I remember one day I scooped that thing full 5 times, made 5 trips to town with it.
Knox, I think of all the people that we've had, we haven't brought up this one subject, and maybe you can help us out on it, and that's the crash, the year of the crash, which reminded me of when you said 1929. Do you recall much about that year?
What, when we went into the Depression? And
Yes, when the stock market crashed and the many moneyed people went broke and jumped off high buildings. Do you recall many things about that year?
Well, all I can recall in the beginning of the 1920s, that's World War II.
World War I?
World War I, you know, and things went to the bottom. They really a bit worse off then than they were in the 30s almost. People bought cattle, and I remember they're talking about cattle now. I remember one fellow come up there and bought my wife's folks' steer yearlings, give $90 for them in the fall of 1919. He wintered them and summered them the next summer and wintered the next winter and sold them the next summer $54 a head.
And that didn't make money very fast.
No.
That was a real depression right there for a year or
and
two.
then they began to kind of get straightened up, you know. By the last 29, they made a good wheat crop in this country in 26, in 28 and 29. Then they made a pretty fair crop, and then again in the 30s they began to get dry. But 31 they had a pretty good crop, but the bottom fell out of everything, you know. And wheat was 26 cents a bushel. I sold a lot of wheat, 26 cents.
And it cost you more than that to harvest it.
Yeah, and hauled it to town, scooped it up off the ground, and hauled it to town, and sold 26 cents a bushel. But it picked up a little bit later, and I got 50 or 60 cents for part of my wheat. But it just went on down, everything did, till cattle wasn't worth anything.
And you couldn't raise anything because we had about 7 years of drought.
About 7 years of drought, and I don't know, I guess the Lord's good to us. We always raised a lot of garden stuff over here and planted a lot of stuff in the field, raised beans. I had roasting ears all the time.
So you ate well.
We eat well. That's one thing I can say, we've always had plenty to eat.
And did you have cows to milk in those days?
Yeah, we milked cows.
And raised your chickens?
Raised chickens and everything.
The people, for the most part, have not had turkeys. Some people had turkeys, but not many, and guineas and ducks and geese and that sort of thing never have been plentiful in this country, have they?
Well, we used to raise quite a lot of turkeys. The girls did all the time. And I used to sell turkeys to Pete Fisher all the time when he was down here on Main Street.
Is that right? Graze them out on the grass, the grasshoppers?
Yeah, well, we fed them. Turkeys won't get fat on grasshoppers.
They kind of stay alive.
They stay alive.
But they run so much they don't get any meat on them.
They don't do no good on them. You got to feed them.
What kind of turkeys do you have? These brown?
They had them big bronze turkeys.
Bronze turkeys. Did you ever raise any white ones?
We never had no white ones.
They were kind of a menace because the coyotes could get them.
Well, coyotes catch them others too. But I don't know. The white ones were smaller turkeys. Everybody used to want big turkeys, now they want little turkeys.
How many turkeys would you raise in a year?
Oh, they raised about 30 or 40. They didn't raise big herds on them like they do now, you know.
Some people have as high as 500, I guess.
Yeah.
What would you get for turkeys, do you know?
I think it's about 18 cents a pound.
Did you dress them yourself?
They dressed them here. You didn't dress them.
You
They
just
used
brought
to
them in?
Yeah, they had dressing places here where they bought them.
And so you just brought the live turkeys?
They used to sell lots of produce, especially at Perry. They had a big produce outfit up there.
You get turkeys weighing 14, 15 pounds, I guess.
Oh, yeah, up to 20 pounds. Old gobblers would.
So you'd get $3.50 to $4 for a turkey.
Yeah, they done pretty good with them turkeys.
And it didn't cost you too much to raise them.
Yeah.
How about, did you sell cream and butter?
Yeah, we sold cream and butter and everything. I remember one summer in particular, we'd milk some cows and we'd separate cream. They had a cream outfit here at that time. We'd come to town, an old Model T, that was in the 20s, and sell our cream. We'd get $7 for a cream. We'd fill up the old Ford with gas and buy our groceries, and that'd do us, and we had several children.
And that you buy things like flour and sugar.
Yeah.
And did a lot of canning in those days.
Oh, yeah, we canned. Everybody canned stuff.
Did you ever can any beef?
Lots of it.
Lots of it.
Yeah.
Just practically everything that you had, you canned. So you ate well.
Yeah, we canned the pork, and we canned the sausage and everything.
So that you had, through the winter, you could suffice. And how did you water your garden? With a windmill?
Yeah, we didn't water it too much. So we planted a lot of stuff in the field, corn and beans. I just put beans in a planter and just go around the field and plant them like we would corn.
How did you harvest them?
Well, we just gathered them beans.
With a sack, huh?
Yeah.
Did you ever pick any cotton, Knox?
Well, that's the reason folks moved in the cotton patch. I was just 6 years old and they couldn't get me to pick. I tormented the rest of them, so they moved.
Did you ever ride your mother's cotton sack while she was picking?
Oh, I imagine. I don't know about everything, yeah.
That was not only hard work, but it's a hard way to make a living.
Yeah, it wasn't them day and time.
You didn't pull any bolls. You picked the cotton clean.
The cotton clean, you know. The cleaner you picked, the better it was.
And better price you'd get.
Yeah.
The gins weren't equipped to clean it up too well. Knox, we'll be back and talk about your days here in Hansford County and Ochiltree County right after this message from J.L. Brock. Our guest this morning is Knox Pipkin, and brought us a real treat. I haven't had a chance to try any of these, but I know what they are. They're sometimes called sugar cookies. My mother always referred to them as tea cakes. How long has that recipe been in your family, Knox?
Oh, I don't know. Mother used to make them. I just found a recipe in a book down there and wanted to make them. They added some to it. It wasn't just like I wanted, so I made it over.
Didn't taste just like Mother's.
Well, it wasn't sweet enough, the recipe I was using, so I put more sugar in it.
Uh-huh. But that's the old-fashioned tea cake, and that art has passed by us. I guess, though, it's beginning to be revived. But
yeah.
I know my mother's recipe was handed down to her from a lady that was quite old, and so the recipe for tea cakes, as she called them, must have been over 100 years old. Well, way over 100 years old. That's real nice of you to bring those. Knox, let's talk about your farming days in Hansford County. When did you buy this place that you're now on?
1919.
1919.
Yeah, we moved.
And how many acres you have there?
640 in that first section bought, then 46 I bought another half section across the road from us.
And that's let's establish where that is again. It's about 20 miles from Spearman.
Yeah, 20 miles right southeast of Spearman.
Southeast, over in Ochiltree County.
Yeah.
That's down. Is that close to Sam's Corner over in that area?
Well, it's 10 miles this side of Sam's Corner. It's right. 281 highway goes east, and then it jogs north, and when it turns back east, we live right straight west where it turns
I think I
east.
have it pinpointed now. You're not
Yeah.
too far from the Canadian breaks.
No, we're just a mile up Nature's breaks.
And you of course have wheat there, but you must have run some cattle all during the time.
We've always had a few cattle.
And through the years, have they been pretty good to you, the cattle?
Yeah, they haven't been too bad to me.
What's the real ingredient for being successful in cattle? We hear of drugstore cowboys, that's the ones that buy and sell, but the ones that raise them on the grass, an old rancher told me many, many years ago that short grass was the biggest enemy that a cattleman could have. In other words, you don't want to outgraze, put too many cattle in and graze your grass down.
Well, that's right, where you're raising cows and calves, if you got a cow herd.
Because you might want to keep them and wait for a price break to go up, and you can't do it if you're out of grass. Is that right?
It's the cow business is a good business if you so you can stay in it all the time. The mother cow business is, but most of the cattle business in this country are more up here on the plains is just buying calves in the fall and put them on the wheat and run them.
And then putting them in a feedlot.
Now I'll stay out of the feedlot.
You stay out of the feedlot. You sell them, let somebody else feed them out.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with the cattle anymore. I got the place rented out to the boys and they operate it. And
now,
every day.
Do you have irrigation on the place now?
Yeah, we've got 4 wells on the place.
And when did you first go into irrigation?
57, 56.
You were one of the pioneers in that business then.
Yeah.
And how long was it before you decided it was a pretty good thing?
Well, I drilled another well in 64, and that was 65. Then I drilled another one about 3 years ago.
And it took a while for you to learn enough about the farming with irrigation to make it do as best it would.
Oh, yeah. First well was drilled. I wished I hadn't drilled it there to go to drill. First crop I had, I didn't have the ground loose enough. This wheat ground's been used wheat. It's hard panned underneath. And I go water that stuff. That water just went through there like it running down on the pavement, you know. And
didn't irrigate it.
I didn't make no crop. And I borrowed the money to dig the well and put in 2 miles of pipe. And the time I got through, it was about the second year, it was $35,000 in the hole. And I didn't know where it was going from there.
You thought, man, this is crazy. Well, how did you solve that problem?
Well, we got rigged up and began to learn something that time. Got our ground all plowed up good, and then was making good crop.
How would you, did you use chisels to plow?
Oh, I moldboarded it. But chisel just as good as moldboarding, where you had chisel, didn't have no chisel in.
And so it took a little longer to moldboard it.
Yeah.
What'd you have, about 3 or 4?
Had a 3-bottom plow.
And what'd you get, 25, 30 acres a day out of that?
Oh, I made it 20, 25 acres.
That's a lot different to the 3 acres you used.
Yeah.
And then the water would go down and the crops would
penetrated. We made a good crop then. About the 3rd year, we started making good crop. It took us 3 years to learn.
That just seems to be the way it is with nearly every farmer. Now, you had to learn also about fertilizing and how to use that to the best advantage. Had you used fertilizer before you irrigated?
No, the first 2 or 3 years we didn't use no fertilizers. We irrigated.
And what's the most acre yield that you've had off that land since irrigation?
Oh, I don't know, about 7,000 pounds, I imagine.
That's Milo. And that's considered a very good crop.
Yeah, most times you'll average about 6,000 pounds.
And that's good. But you weren't getting over 2,500 to 3,000 on dry land, is that right?
Well, maize you just don't make nothing near on dry land maize hardly at all, very seldom.
Heads don't develop very good.
No, it gets too dry at the wrong time.
How about the wheat now?
Well, we done pretty good with our wheat while we was irrigating it. We got about 40, 50 bushels off of it.
What does a farmer have to have these days in the way of yield on Milo to break even?
Well, if you rent the land or owned it, either one, I guess it doesn't make much difference. You got to have about 100 bushels, at least 100 bushels acres come out on it. Of course, the price it is now, it makes it a little bit different, but like it's been up to last year.
When it was $1.75 a hundred.
Yeah, you had to come out pretty good on it.
And I guess the last year has been the best year the farmers had in 50 years.
Last year was the best year they've ever had since I've been farming.
And hopefully they'll have many, many more equally as good.
I'm afraid of that, though.
You afraid it might go down some?
Yeah.
What do you think about this complex situation we're in right now? I don't mean politically, but because that's a different world entirely, but the complex situation of selling wheat and Milo to the whole world, Russia, for example, and Japan and China and many other markets.
I don't think any man's smart enough to know what to do about it.
Do you think that it's being manipulated by politicians, and we're still kind of the pawns of the politicians?
Well, if it wasn't a politician deal, why would the thing fluctuate so fast from one day to the next?
For example, did you ever grow any soybeans?
I never happened to soybeans.
They went to $13, wasn't it?
Yeah, 12, but yeah, $13, somewhere along there. I know it was over $12.
And if you'd had a field of those, you'd have been rich in 1 year, wouldn't you?
Yeah, a lot of guys contracted their soybeans, about $6 and couldn't deliver them, and they had to.
That cost them money because they
growing them all.
Yeah,
done it,
It's if you contract and don't grow it, well, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah, that's what I worry about, this contracting business. I never have contracted anything unless I already had it.
Knox, you and I both are farmers' heritage, and I think both of us probably feel like that farming is the backbone of the whole country. That's what it grew on from its infancy.
Yeah.
And what do you think about the future of farming? Do you think it's nothing like it was, but in that you have fewer farmers and they farm bigger tracts of land and use different ways to farm it. But do you think farming is probably going to become more stable than it's been in the years past?
Well, it's kind of hard to say, but I still think that the farming deal falls the wayside, and the cattle business is all go kaplunk, the whole country go kaplunk, because that's the mainstay of the country.
And without it, people can't eat,
Can't eat without it, so that's it.
A year and a half or 2 years ago, there was a lot of propaganda spread that hit right at the cattleman, that he was the big villain of the whole thing, and they boycotted stores and boycotted beef and so forth. And as a result, the beef situation, prices got frozen by the politicians, and then the market was flooded all of a sudden, and since that time the cattle industry has been sick. Do you think that the cattleman, if he were to get together with all the other cattlemen and reverse the propaganda, that he might be better off? Or what do you think?
Well, it's hard to say.
The healthiest way, I guess, is to have a place to keep your cattle so that you're not forced to sell them on a particular market.
Well, I don't know. If I look at it like this, and fat cattle especially, when they get fat and ready to go, you just will sell them regardless, because you're going to get into it either way you go.
It's downhill from then on.
Because I heard this morning, these heavy cattle sold yesterday for 37 cents.
And it probably cost them 50 to 55 cents.
And the bigger they get, the more it costs them to fatten them. I ain't much of a feedlot guy, but I know that from experience. Anything else you feed the same way.
Well, Knox, you've gone through a lot of real scary situations, crises in the farming and ranching industry. You're bound to have through the years. What do you see in the future for?
Well, the way things are going, it don't look too good to me.
You think it has to get better, it can't get worse.
Well, it could get a lot worse.
But what do you think? Do you think we'll
I
see a
think
better market in 6 months or so?
what worries me more than anything else our political deal.
I'm afraid I'd be editorializing here, I guess, but I'm afraid we may have politicians on both sides of the fence that have their selfish interest at heart more than they do the country's interest. And as long as that's happening, we're caught in the middle, so to speak.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the various changes that were made here in Hansford County by itself. Spearman, did you trade mostly at Spearman when you first were here, or?
Oh yeah, we've always traded here at Spearman since they've had a town.
Now you've seen it grow from what, 500 people to?
I've seen it grow from
nothing. Yeah,
start.
Because it moved here in 20, didn't it, or 19?
Oh, wheat here when they had a scoop shovel elevator.
Well, that meant they had hands there scooping it up.
Yeah. 19, the first year the railroad come in here, and 19 we hauled the wheat in here. And they scooped it out of the wagons into the cars. They didn't have no elevator, no grade, no auger, no nothing.
Just shipped it right direct on the train.
Yeah, just scooped it in the cars off the wagons.
No facilities at all to store it. If you had more than they had cars, what?
Well, in one outfit here, I remember, bought some silo rings over here. I took some silos down, and they had buying wheat and scoop it off in that deal.
And then they'd have to scoop it out of there.
Scoop it out of there when they got a car and ship it out.
They didn't have augers to move it from one place to the other.
The all hand elevator.
Men did a lot of hard work in those days. How was the town like? Did you know everybody in town?
Well, I did. They have spent so long ago. God knows practically everybody.
And did you have credit? Did you operate on credit in those days, or?
Well, I don't know. I've never been much creditable.
I was just wondering if all the stores ran credit.
Oh yeah, they run credit.
And the farmers settled up once a year, I guess.
Well,
twice a year.
They settled up also. Now they done past that stage in this part of the country at that time. They supposed to settle up also, and some of them I don't imagine never settled up at all, but some of them hard times.
You saw a lot of farmers leave here during the Dust Bowl days.
Oh yeah, a lot of people. I seen them moving houses out of Spearman here like nobody's business, like moved the whole town away.
Where'd they move them to?
Well, they moved in Dumas and different places where them oil booms was on, them plants were put in.
And they get jobs there and move.
Yeah, and move out. They just moved a lot of houses out of Spearman.
And instead of going, well, I guess the boom towns didn't have a place for them. They had to move their living.
Move up there.
That's the first I'd heard of that. And so Spearman went lower during the Dust Bowl.
Oh yeah, they went down. Spearman went way down during the 30s.
You saw it then start into an actual boom, I guess, in the 50s, didn't you?
Well, they went to building back up pretty fast when especially this oil boom started. But they built more, I guess, in the last 20 years than they've ever built since I've been here.
In the first 50?
Yeah. First 30 years.
First 30 years. It's about 54 years old, 55 now. What about the railroad? It's here, and that's why the town moved here,
yeah.
wasn't it? When was the first tractor you bought?
26.
26?
Yeah.
What, did you have rubber tires or lugs?
No, they all had lugs on them then.
And if you weren't careful, if you got stuck, you'd bury it, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Spin the wheels and it'd just dig a hole for itself.
Then you'd have to go get your fence post, stick it on a lug so you could raise that out.
What would be the problem? Mud most of the time?
Well, just plowing them old tractors either one way. If you messed around and got your one way kind of balled up and something hung under it and you got pulling too much, you just
stick your tractor.
Spin your wheel out when you wasn't careful.
And first thing you know, you were stuck.
The first thing you know, you're stuck. You have to down the hook and get your chain and pull yourself out.
Who'd you buy your tractor from? Do you remember?
Well, the person bought a White House Lumber Company in Perryton. They used to. Then all about all the rest of them had Warmel here in John Deere.
And later, R.L. McClellan and Sons, I guess, put in an implement.
Yeah, I don't know what. I got support, didn't have no credits, you know, and so I didn't know what he was going to do. I'm 36, and I went down there to Lee McClellan's, and he said he had a 29 model second-hand case that's repossessed, and he'd sell it to me for $8 1/4 and take one of them old John Deere's in a down payment. So I traded with him. We done all the farm of that. And
did it have rubber tires on it?
no, it had lugs.
Lugs. When did you first get your first combine?
Well, I bought a combine in 23.
Well, they had combines back in those days.
Yeah, I bought that from second-hand with Lane Sanders. That was Rex Sanders' brother, uncle to Rue and these boys. He's a farmer down in Groom, and I guess he went and broke something. They had it, and he'd had it 1 year, and I just took up his payment on it, and he brought it up here to me.
Did it have its own power, or do you operate off the tractor power?
Well, it had a motor on it.
Had a motor on it?
Yeah.
I didn't recall those first combines where they had their own power.
It was international.
But you had to pull them with a tractor.
Well, pulling a horse, then I don't tractor. Had 8 mules on it.
And how big a swath would it take?
Well, I can cut 12 foot.
12 foot. About like to do now then.
But if you're getting heavy wheat, you're in trouble. You couldn't hardly get your motor slowed down. You couldn't get your horsepower slowed down.
So it could cut.
You know, you couldn't throttle them mules down like you do a tractor.
When they got loaded, they wanted to pull out against it.
Well, they just went so fast, you know.
And so you had problems of slowing your combine down?
Well, you'd have to pull out, you know, not cut quite so much. Well, you done that.
So that you wouldn't have more in there than it could handle at the same time. How about the first time you had a self-propelled combine? Was it?
Well, I didn't have I bought a 55 combine, 57, I think, John Deere. That's the first self-propelled I had. That's really about the first thing I guess I had in this part of the country, that 55 John Deere.
And how much wheat could you cut? I mean, how many bushels could you harvest?
Oh, I don't know. You cut 2,000 bushels with them.
In a day. And that amounted to a week's work, I guess, for a whole neighborhood back in the thresher days, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen these threshers and engines that J.D. Wilbanks has out here?
Yeah.
That's quite a collection, isn't it? If you had it all to do over, would you stay on the farm like you've done?
Yep.
What are some of the advantages?
Well, it's a good life, and it's a peaceful life. This farming now is not like it used to be. This irrigation farm, you got to do a lot of hard work, but you're going to make something.
It's a free life, isn't it? You're not.
I think if we hadn't went to irrigation, we'd lost our land. We just lived it out, and that'd have been all been to it.
Now, what about the water table? Is it depreciating fast enough we ought to be worried?
Well, it's going pretty fast, but the art down there, it hasn't sunk near as fast as it has in some places.
Not as many wells around you, I guess.
Well, there's not as many wells. But our water level hasn't went down over 10 or 15 feet since we've been pumping.
How much water table do you have there?
Oh, I don't know. We've got quite a lot of water.
50 or 60 feet?
Oh, yeah. Maybe 100 feet.
And it goes down, what, about a foot a year or something like that?
It probably does.
So, well, maybe not that much if you've been in since 50.
But I have noticed they test that first well we drilled down there, that old well. And up to last 2 or 3, I say last 4 years, in the wintertime, that well always come back up to where it was when we pumped it.
So there's something feeding that underground system there, isn't there?
But it never did sink up and didn't. But of course, since that time, they've been putting in a lot more wells. More wells you put in, the faster the water table is going down.
But it seems to be the answer to this country.
Yeah.
Do you see any new crops coming in? Now, when would you first start farming milo. There was a time when the wheat farmers just farmed wheat and that was it, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
What about it?
Well, they raised milo stuff since I was a kid. But it had different types of
Yeah,
milo.
the hook
Old crooked neck maize.
Yeah, and you harvested it by hand, didn't you?
Yeah, we used to cut that stuff by hand and pitch it out in a row and pile, and then go back when it dried out and pick it up and then put it in what we call a barn that had a grainer place, stack it in there to feed the horses on in winter, you know.
As the main ingredient, just
Yeah,
to feed
that's the main feed that had grain.
What do you think there'll be a time when there'll be any concentrated farming like truck farming, for example, vegetables of that kind in
I
this
doubt
area?
it in this country.
Why do you think that?
Well, the
Still
season,
plenty of land, I guess.
plenty of land, season kind of short, and they'll have to have a different class of farmers. These farmers we got here, they won't truck farm because they don't like to work hard enough.
Completely different farming.
Yeah, I have to have a different farmer, a different set of farmers. What do you think about it?
That's the way I look at it. Of course, I'm not an expert. I haven't been in the farming business in many years, but it looks to me like that we probably won't be around if they start truck patching here on a big scale. But
well, I think the type of farming people are doing in this country is the safest farming there is for the country and the people that's doing it.
now, do you think there'll be any new kinds of crops, such as will soybeans ever be a major factor here?
Well, I don't know. They'll have to get to where they'll make more than the maize will. I mean, whether make more money than the maize will for people to plant them.
There's one factor. Soybeans seem to have they're a legume and therefore would build the soil back to some extent.
Well, they've got two things. You raise soybeans when that's fertilized, but yet the weed problem gets into it. And you can't spray them for weeds, we know that.
Because they're a weed themselves, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's broadleaf plant.
Broadleaf plant.
So you have a problem there. You'd get weeds pretty well infested pretty quick.
Yeah.
You think pretty well milo and wheat probably will last for several generations yet.
Well, wheat's a good thing. They buy these calves and run them on it, and most times they make good money on them. That's an extra pay deal.
Gives a cash crop in the winter
Yeah, and the
time.
maize stalks makes good grazing for them to browse on, and I think the maize and wheat will be about the best deal for this part of the country.
Do you think that the farmer will ever go back to having his own gardens? Some of them still have, but most of them don't.
Looks like the way it's going now, a lot of people are going to have a garden.
In the towns and everywhere else.
Yeah, the way they're buying garden seed.
So, you still live on the farm, do you now, Knox? I think you're a living proof that hard work never hurt anybody.
Oh,
You're in good health, 81 years old, and hope you live another 81, Knox.
yeah.
It's been real nice having you with us this morning.
Glad to be with you.
Anything you'd like to talk to the people about before we go?
Oh, I don't know anything more telling them.
What are some of the ingredients of your good health and your long life?
Well, one of the main things, I've been serving the Lord 48 years. I don't drink, I don't smoke, and go to bed early and get up pretty early.
About how many hours do you sleep at night, Knox?
Well, it just depends on what kind of notion of me.
you don't set that time.
I then go to bed about 9, get up about 7 now.
Uh-huh. So you have 7 to 8 hours.
Used to get about 5 when I was working.
That's 8 to 9 hours, I guess, of sleep. And just kind of take it easy then.
Yeah, I don't work anymore, just fool around the place.
Probably do more work than most of us now.
No, I don't get around as good as I used to, and I've had quite a little sickness.
You played basketball in your school days, didn't you?
Well, just school teams, all they didn't have no match game. Just town played us school boys, and they could beat us.
You were probably one of the giants in your day because you're a tall man for
Oh, I'm not too tall, 5'11".
5'11", but there weren't many 6 feet men in those days, were there?
Yeah, no. I was kind of tall, slim, didn't weigh too much.
And you, I think one of the things you could point to for your longevity is you're not overweight. You've kept your weight very handily. Do you work at that, or is it just a natural thing?
Just a natural deal. Here lately, I've had to kind of cut down on eating, I've had trouble with my heart.
So you kind of keep from getting too heavy then?
Yeah.
Well, you're not a bit too heavy.
I just weigh 160 now. I lost quite a little weight lately.
5'11". You probably were 6 feet at one time, don't you imagine?
Well, the Army married me in 1918. I was 5 feet 11 inches.
Did you fight in the World War I?
No, I was already married and I had 2 children when the...
But you did register for the draft?
Yeah, I had to register. I've registered twice.
You registered for both wars then? Yeah. That's something. How many children do you have, Knox?
9.
9 children. All of them living around this area?
No, we lost one boy in World War II.
And the rest of them?
Yeah, all the rest of them lived around here. One girl lives at Woodard and one at Perryton, and 4 of the kids who live here in Spearmont, and one of them lives east, all close in home.
A very fine heritage from a very fine family. Knox, thanks a lot for coming up and being our guest this morning.
Thank you for being here.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. Our guest this morning has been Knox Pipkin, an old-timer that's been around the Panhandle all of his life, 81 years, since 1893. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time with another guest, and our program this morning has been brought to you by the J.L. Brock Insurance Agency, who joined me in wishing you a very happy day.